Kind of funny, the engine sounds like a lawnmower when it's idling. What's up, everybody? Today I'm here in a 2015 Jeep Cherokee. This is the Latitude trim with 4x4. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to my fiance for allowing me to review her Jeep Cherokee. All right, today we'll start with the interior of the 2015 Jeep Cherokee. First is the steering wheel in the 2015 Cherokee, and it's really nice. In this Latitude trim, it's actually leather wrapped. It has a really good 9-3 grip. It doesn't actually have the 10-2 notches, even though this is a little bit sportier of an SUV because it's a Jeep. But the 9-3 grip, it offers a good way to hold the wheel for long trips. So on the right front side of the steering wheel, you have your cruise control options. And then on the back side, you actually have your volume controls. If we go over to the left side, you have your general toggle for your center screen and the tachometer. And then also you have your hands-free phone options for answering and declining calls. On the back of it, you have your seek and scan, your tuning knob, so to say. It's also for the radio. And now for the instrument cluster on the 2015 Cherokee. It's got your traditional Jeep gauges. They have a pretty typical design. Nothing super exciting or different about them, but they're easy to read. So in the center of the instrument cluster, you're going to have your coolant temperature, your fuel gauge, thermometer for what the temperature is outside, and a compass. In the middle on the screen, you've got information like your digital speedometer, vehicle information, tire pressure, coolant temperature, transmission temperature, oil temperature, pretty much every little bit of information that you need. Next, you've got your fuel economy screen. It gives you your instant fuel economy. You have trip info, audio, messages, probably things you'll never really use. Now as we move over to the center of the dash, you have a pretty good sized touchscreen. This one's capable of doing your radio, media, any phone information, your climate controls, and the compass. The center screen also has a backup camera for whenever you put the car in reverse. That is really useful. On the next trim up, however, you'll get this entire center part as a screen with all touchscreen buttons for your radio, media controls. It's all there on the main screen. I believe that's the Uconnect system. Coming down to the climate control area, you've got your big traction control off button. I would assume that's if you want to go off-road. That'll give you more control over your vehicle so it's not constantly trying to correct itself. You got your general climate controls, a turn knob for how powerful you want the fan blowing, and then your hot and cold buttons to adjust the temperature. As we move down just a little bit farther, you actually have this very special knob right here called the Select Terrain. This is going to be the controls for your 4x4 in this car, which I think is really neat that you can do that. The car is in front wheel drive mode until your windshield wipers turn on, or you tell it down here with one of these knobs that you need 4x4. As you rotate through it, you get your auto mode, which you can determine based on whether your windshield wipers are on or off, the snow mode, sport mode, or sand and mud. What's really cool about the sport mode is that it'll actually bias some of the power to go to the rear wheels. That'll feel a little bit more punchy whenever you've got the V6 trim. The sand and mud, I believe, will actually help you crawl out of the sand. It'll help you control your throttle so that you don't just keep digging yourself further into a hole. Literally. Jeep Cherokee comes with 2 USB ports, auxiliary port, SD card slot, and then 2 12-volt outlets. Seating space in the Cherokee is actually really good as well. I'm 6'5" actually, and I have plenty of leg room whenever I'm sitting at certain positions. The headroom in here I'm sitting pretty high in the chair actually, and it's still pretty good, for me at least. The rear leg room is pretty generous in this. Whenever I sit behind my fiance seating position, she's relatively small, but whenever I'm behind her, there's plenty of leg room for me, and the headroom is pretty good back there. I think it could do a little bit better for somebody my size, but I don't think that this car is designed for somebody my size to be sitting in the back. Anyway, we'll start it up, we'll go for a ride. The key fob's pretty nice, it's simple. You just gotta, honestly, unlock a lock and panic button, but put the key in, do a little turn. You really barely have to turn it, and it fires right up. All right, we're setting off in my fiance's 2015 Jeep Cherokee. This is the Latitude trim. It's got 4x4 capabilities. What's really cool about it, I showed in the interior clip, you've got this little knob down here for different driving modes based on whether it's snowing or if it's raining. 4x4 will kick on when it needs to. So basically it's going to save you gas mileage anytime that you don't need it. And that's by keeping it in front wheel drive mode until the 4x4 actually kicks on. Just having two wheels pulling you saves you a lot of fuel. So one thing that I should mention, me coming from my regular driving car, it's a little Volkswagen Jetta, stepping up to this SUV, it's a good size. It's not too big and it's not really too small either. I mean, it fits that middle of the ground SUV segment. So parking this thing really isn't that much harder than parking my Jetta. It doesn't necessarily feel like a sedan. I think it takes a little more effort. It's nice that you have a backup camera to help you. But if you're worried about an SUV being so big that it's hard to park consistently, this isn't really one that you need to worry about. It's pretty nimble for its size. So just rolling along in this thing, the characteristic of a usual Jeep is going to be a little bit more of a sport-like suspension. Everything feels a little bit tighter and put together. That's because Jeep usually has that heritage of being an off-road vehicle, and if your suspension's extremely loose for an off-road vehicle, then you're probably going to have some problems when you're off-road. You need that tightness so that everything kind of springs back together whenever you're taking some odd angles or whatnot. And obviously you're not going to do much off-roading. I mean, I guess you could do some if you wanted to in this car, but it doesn't affect you on daily driving. I think it's a little tighter than other SUVs, but to some people you could argue that that'd be a little bit more fun. You've got cars like the Honda CR-V or the Toyota RAV4, which, don't get me wrong, they're great cars, but they are extremely boring. I mean, they are A to B commuting machines, and that's what they're made for. That's why they sell so well, but they don't really give you a very responsive driving experience. This car, I mean, you feel a few more things on the road. I think the steering response is pretty healthy. If the road's a little bit rough, the steering wheel vibrates a little bit more. So coming back to the ride quality, right now we're on a really smooth road, so obviously it feels really good. But when we were on some bumpy roads earlier, it takes them pretty well. I mean, again, this is supposed to be kind of an off-roading vehicle, so you should be able to maintain more control when you're on a bumpy road. That's why they designed the suspension to be so tight. If you think about sports cars, the reason why they have to tune their suspension so tightly is the goal is to keep the wheels on the ground as much as you can. And that's the goal with any Jeep. So, I mean, it does feel a little bit rougher than other ones. I mean, you don't really feel like you're on a cloud, but it kind of keeps you alert. I personally think it's a lot more fun to have a car that doesn't just glide. I've been in a few of those, and it's a little bit more of a boring driving experience. Next, let's talk about the powertrain of this 2015 Jeep Cherokee. So under the hood of this specific one, we've got the 2.4 liter 4-cylinder engine. I think it makes about 180 horsepower, 170 pound-feet of torque. And given that this car is about 3,700 pounds in weight, acceleration can be a little feeble sometimes. The other option for the engine in this, I think, is a 3.2 liter V6, which makes about 280 horsepower. So I've got word from my fiance that when she test drove that one, it did pick up quite a bit better than this one. I think the 2.4 liter is really tuned just enough power to where it's not going to drive you crazy. but there really isn't any more if you're hoping to put the throttle down and be able to pass a bunch of people at once. It's pretty modest on the power they gave you. Let's film a little acceleration here. Well, you don't really feel much. I guess that's one thing we could say. It's definitely enough to get you moving. If you need to leave a red light really quick or something, you could probably beat somebody off the line, I think. 0 to 60 on these is probably in the mid 9-second range. So it's definitely not a rocket, I guess, to be nice. It also probably doesn't deliver a huge punch, but again, this is the 2.4 liter 4-cylinder, so it's tuned to give you just enough power to get you around and get you the best gas mileage as possible. Part of the thing that hurts this car is it's the weight of it. I mean, I think I said earlier it's about 3,700 pounds, and it has the same specs as like a Honda Accord or a Toyota Camry. Those cars 0 to 60 is about 8.5 seconds. And they're 3,300 pounds. So you add 400 pounds to this thing, it does help the ride quality a lot, but it does make the performance and the gas mileage suffer a little bit. So for a little bit more about the powertrain, this engine is actually mated to a 9-speed automatic. It's a lot of gears, but it does a pretty good job. I haven't noticed that the transmission really hunts through gears very often. It won't be stuck in 4th when it should be in 3rd, or vice versa. Honestly, I think there is a little bit of gear kicking. If you go into 3rd gear, it seems to be the one that will punch you a little bit harder than other ones. But the transmission does a good job of feeding you whatever power is actually available. Like right now, what gear am I in? I'm actually in 6th gear going 40 miles an hour. But it's holding the RPMs at a good point in the power band to where if you need to move a little bit, you can put the throttle down, it'll drop a gear, and then you're cruising. So one cool bit of information about this powertrain is that the base warranty is actually 5 years and 100,000 miles. So if you're able to drive 100,000 miles in 5 years, that's good news for you. Otherwise, it does seem like it's just kind of trying to get you through a loan term of 5 years. To where you don't have to pay for any mechanical repairs, and then it's kind of just saying good luck from there. The typical term is usually about 10 years, 100,000 miles, which I think that shows a little bit more trust in their designs, that they won't fail on you for 10 years, and that'll basically keep them from having to pay for any repairs. But even so, 100,000 miles at a base warranty is still pretty generous. But again, right now, this car is almost 3 years old, and it's only at 30,000 miles, and it's driven quite a bit. So it's almost halfway through that 5-year term, and it's not even close to 50,000 miles, which would be the halfway point. So again, it's a generous warranty. I don't think a lot of people are going to get to reap the benefits fully of it like they should be able to. All right, so we're going over a bumpy road right now, and like I was saying, it handles it pretty well. I think there's a good bump right there. Again, it's a little sporty, so it's going to feel a little bit tighter than your average plush, comfortable SUV, but it gives it some personality. Coming around a corner right here, we'll see how well it sticks. And wow, I mean, this thing, it really feels like it's a sedan almost, the way that it grips the road. And that's all going to be attributed to its sporty suspension. The tighter suspension allows it to corner a lot more tightly than any of the other competition. So basically, if you're looking for something that's going to be a little bit more fun than just an A to B car, which this really is, but it'll get you there with a few more smiles. This is the kind of SUV that I would want to take down a back road. Alright, so gas mileage in the Cherokee. This 4-cylinder is rated for 22 in the city and about 31 on the highway. And that's not too inaccurate. I think the city is actually a little bit better. Usually I've seen an average of about 24, and the highway is more like 29. But the numbers really aren't that far off. If you go to the V6 trim, it's surprisingly almost the same gas mileage actually. So if you want a little bit more power without sacrificing the gas mileage, it costs a little bit more, but you won't lose anything on the gas mileage side. All right, to wrap up, I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of run through my final thoughts after driving this around for a little bit. First off, the ride quality is fantastic. I mean, this thing, the weight of it helps it with a lot smoother of a drive, but it's also tight enough to still be responsive and sporty. Honestly, you don't really feel many bumps in this thing, but it can corner way better than you'd expect a big SUV like itself to do. So I have to give it a plus on fun to drive. Next is a little recap of the engine. It leaves a lot to be desired, I would say. It's perfect just to get you around. It gets good gas mileage on the highway. But if you want something that you'll feel the engine push you a little bit more, you may want to look at the V6 trim. That might suit you a little bit better. The transmission overall is pretty good. It helps you with that fuel efficiency. It does have a few instances where it'll kick. I think that's just a normal thing with the Jeeps though. Probably the 9-speed being relatively new, they may not have worked out all those bugs yet. But all in all, it's a pretty good powertrain. Also, the interior is a good place to be. As I said, the seats are pretty supportive, they're comfortable. Everything in here is pretty well laid out. It's easy to find different things that you need. And so this is probably a car that I would recommend for somebody who's got a smaller family. The back seat space is pretty good, but I think it's probably better suited for young kids as opposed to full-grown teenagers or adults. This will be a good car for younger families, I think. Especially it's good for all-weather capabilities if you need to get somewhere in the wintertime. It's a safe vehicle, so there's a lot of benefits for family use. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review of the 2015 Jeep Cherokee. Again, this is the Latitude trim 4x4. If you're looking for one, or you're looking for an SUV, you may want to put this one on your list. It's at least worth the test drive, I would think, because it's a little bit more fun than the other entries. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed, and then subscribe for the future content. Again, the channel is a little bit new, but it will be growing and there are going to be a lot more posts in the future. Thank you, and until next time.